Hello and welcome to My Voice podcast. I'm Alex Wilkinson, a sport and exercise psychology student from Loughborough University. I'm currently on an internship with Sport and Communities, who are a community development organisation that supports all members of the community, from young to old, across a broad spectrum of needs. This podcast is part of the My Voice project, a national community lottery funded programme that helps to give young people a voice in their community and a platform for creating change and social action. Thank you for taking the time to join me, and welcome to My Voice podcast. Since the start of the coronavirus, there's been a huge change for everyone, which has subsequently caused positive changes for the environment. On today's podcast, we're going to be finding out how the environment has been affected and what we can further do to help. I'd like to say a warm welcome to all of my guests today, as I'm joined by Councillor Joe Porter, Ross Bedema, Nick Kelly and Ben Oakley. Thank you for joining me today. Would you like to say a brief word about yourself first?
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Councillor Joe Porter, and I'm the District Councillor for Brown Edge and Endham. I'm also Cabinet Member for Climate Change at Staffordshire Moorlands District Council. I've always been very passionate about the environment and climate change. I've been doing practical wildlife conservation work ever since I was about 6. Always really prioritise nature and love spending time outdoors. Outside of politics, I love doing lots of gardening and getting involved in Staffordshire Wildlife Trust, and love country walks and obviously going up the Roaches here locally. So, yeah, climate change is obviously a top priority for everyone. You know, across the world, it's a big priority, and I'm very proud to be playing my part and trying to help our local communities play their part in leaving our environment in a better state than we inherited locally.
That's great. Nice to meet you, Joe. Ross?
Hi, I'm Ross Bedema. I'm the Director of Social Change for Sport and Communities, and I'm responsible for, with my colleague Ben Rigby, the whole of the operation of communities across Derbyshire, Staffordshire and Cheshire.
Thank you very much. Now, Nick, would you like to say a brief word?
Hello, I'm Nick Kelly, and I'm the Cheshire and Staffordshire Development Officer for Sporting Communities. Much like Councillor Joe Porter, I have a big passion for nature and wildlife outside work.
That's brilliant. And last but not least, we've got a young person from the Moorlands area, and that's Ben Oakley. How are you today, Ben?
I'm very good. I'm Ben. I've volunteered at Sporting Communities for over 3 years now, and I'm also a coach at another company as well.
That's fantastic. So globally, we've seen dramatic changes to our environment, as we've seen cities previously covered in smog now have clear blue skies. We've witnessed animals claim back land and are roaming boldly into lockdown cities. The oil industry and airlines are suffering in this new world, but carbon emissions are falling fast. It has almost taken a global pandemic for human civilization to realise that we are truly destroying the planet that supports us. So more people now are walking and cycling to necessary places, more people are growing their own produce, and more are looking to support nature in their own back garden. Firstly, I'll ask you, Joe, do you think people have become more interested in sustainable living to help the environment during lockdown?
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. I think the one big positive that we can all take from this lockdown and this difficult period that we've had is that people feel more connected to nature than ever before. People are appreciating nature on their doorstep. They're realising that, you know, there's all this beautiful nature here on our doorsteps, in our gardens, and, you know, we can all connect with it. It's great for our mental and physical health, of course, as well as there's that co-benefit there that people are starting to realise. And also, another thing that we've witnessed is people are appreciating the simpler things in life. They're appreciating what they have at the moment. And I think that's going to have a lot of long-term benefits for the whole climate change and environment agenda. I think more and more people are going to be keen to do their bit to help the environment. Obviously, this year we've just seen over the last week, actually, this year has marked the fastest decline in carbon emissions on record, I believe. That's what's been reported. And a lot of that is, of course, down to people commuting a lot, obviously not commuting, people using their bikes far more, people walking and running. And, because obviously carbon emissions have gone right down in this, there hasn't been a lot of industrial activity, and you'd expect that of a lockdown. But what I hope to see is a lot of this, lower carbon emissions. I hope that continues beyond the lockdown. I think there's been a lot of lessons that people have learned, and I think there's going to be less commuting, there's going to be less car journeys because people realise they can do things from home. There's going to be more people going out and appreciating nature on their doorstep, more people getting out in their gardens. For example, we've seen that during this lockdown. And, we've seen nature kind of strike back, haven't we? We've seen nature return. Whenever we go outside at the moment, we hear more birds tweeting than we perhaps have for quite a long time. And that's great. I think that's a great thing that we can all be really pleased about. The key is making sure that carries on beyond the lockdown and we don't just return to business as usual. Obviously we've got to recover the economy, but we've got to do it in a sustainable, green way.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important that we don't return to that same state that we did before. Ross, have you got sort of any ideas how we could prevent that? Because there is such a keen interest now in the local areas to support the environment.
Yeah, I've really done lots of different discussion groups recently, and one in particular was an organisation called Playing Out. We're based in Bristol, and they are an organisation that cleans back their streets and have been for a number of years now. So they created their own kind of lockdown in their street, and the car becomes the guest over a short period of time. So the street becomes an area for socialising and playing particularly. And they've been sort of talking about even though they've obviously practiced social distancing, how their street has become part and parcel of their extended garden. And I think there's something in that we not only learn the lessons of what we've experienced and the impact that lockdown has had on the environment, but even just outside our windows, how it's affected our streets. And there's an argument to say that maybe we should claim back our streets and claim back our community space and make sure that the car does become the guest rather than the dominant feature. And I think it'll keep not only our children safe, our community spaces more accessible for such things as bikes, etc. I think it also reinstates a sense of community, which we've seen over this period of time. So there's, as we mentioned in previous blogs, there's been some extraordinary benefits socially to our communities amongst the tragedy that's taken place. So I think there's hope that's come out of all this. And I think, as before I've mentioned, the environment has a way of repairing itself without our interference. And this is a great example of that.
100%. We've seen that leaving these spaces alone and nature's found its way back in and taken a hold on green spaces like before. Nick, you've mentioned before that you've got a keen interest in fitness and you love nature. Have you found that when you're going out for your walks or your exercise, have you found more people are doing that as well? Do you think people have become more adventurous in trying to discover local areas and nature?
I do think they have, yes. Like you say, when I often go to the gym, but obviously during this, the gym's been closed down, so I've had to do other forms of exercise. So I've actually started running outside as opposed to going to the gym, which is something I've never really done before. Now, I've always appreciated and understood nature myself. I've always had a passion for it from the day I was born. But if there's a lot of other people like myself who maybe haven't got the same interest in nature, who are now forced to run, forced is the wrong word, but rather than being able to go to the gym, they're now running in the same places I am. Perhaps these people who didn't appreciate nature before are now seeing it and seeing how wonderful it is.
I think that's so true, because once these people have been submerged and are able to see the beauty of nature, they may take an even greater interest in trying to help their local area and help their communities. Joe, have you seen any kind of change in your local area with the community being more involved, trying to help the environment in that way?
Yeah, I have, absolutely. I mean, I'm very lucky. I've got a fantastic council ward here in Brown Edge and Endon, and we've got a very strong community spirit here, and the environment is quite clearly a top priority for my residents locally, and people have always cared about the environment here. We've got Marshes Hill Common in Brown Edge, for example. We've got Knipesley Pool Reservoir. We've got lots of beautiful farms around a place called Grattan Lane and Hull House Lane and round Hilltop. So we've got a lot of beautiful landscapes here, and people appreciate that nature on their doorstep, because obviously everyone's been going out doing their daily exercise, and in quite a few cases people have been for walks down the country lanes, and quite often, because we all have such busy lives, we often forget those little hidden gems that we have on our doorsteps, and we often forget to appreciate them. It's like, for example, last week I went for a good 2-hour walk down the country lanes around Endon, and I spent literally half an hour of that walk taking photos and videos of butterflies along the country lane. And honestly, I recommend it to anybody. It's so relaxing and therapeutic just watching the butterflies, because obviously this time of year, late spring, early summer, perfect time to spot butterflies. Nature at its best, I would always say butterflies are. And butterflies are fantastic examples of nature. It's always nice to just appreciate them and take photos and videos of them, and just actually try and identify them. It's a bit of fun. And it's also nice just to appreciate them. So, if anybody is out and about doing their daily walks, go spot some butterflies or go and listen out for the birds. It's good fun.
That sounds really interesting, actually. I've not thought of that.
Sorry, Alex, what Joe just said there, it's funny he said that, because me and my brother saw a butterfly we'd never seen before. So we actually went online and identified it. This is a few weeks ago. I can't remember what one it was now. But it's funny that Joe said that. That's something I've never done before. But because there's now time on my hands, I actually researched what the butterfly was that we'd seen.
I think it's afforded us the time to stand and stare, hasn't it? And absorb everything around us. And these are the real benefits and the treasures that we have in our communities. Like Joe's, explained there where he lives. We start to appreciate our own environment, and hopefully from appreciation we'll start protecting it more and doing more locally, more volunteering, more taking the time to step into our communities and do something. I spoke the other day to somebody about volunteering and how we can all do that a little bit more. I mean, and the standing on the steps and clapping for our NHS workers is an example of people collectively coming out and supporting something. We came up with an idea that, wouldn't it be great, and this is for the environment, if we stood up, came out at a certain time of the year, maybe just for 5 minutes, at the front of our houses, just picked up the litter that's immediately in front of us. If 60,000 people did that, I mean, a huge queue at the tip, but it would have done an immediate impact on the community. It's little things. Collectively, we can do big things as well.
That's really interesting, because those little things, like you say, as a collective whole, that'd be really, really beneficial. Ben, you've actually mentioned that you do volunteering for sport in communities. So do you think if more volunteering opportunities came up, like the one that Ross mentioned, if these opportunities were to be created or help people to get involved, do you reckon more people would help support the environment in their community?
Yeah, definitely. Like Ross said, it would have a huge positive impact on everybody's community. Even if it was just something as little as go into a certain place and like planting plants or something, just something like as little as that, it can really put a positive impact on the community. And not only that, it can also it can just a little bit of volunteering can change people's lives. I mean, like that's my story anyway. Because obviously, before I started volunteering, I was always getting in trouble with the police and what have you. And now I'm just out coaching all the time.
Yeah, it's opened up so many different doors for yourself, and it's helped you to grow, as you've mentioned many times before. I think in that way of even something little, like you say, litter picking or planting trees, it does help people to get invested into a new interest. And volunteering is definitely a hobby and an interest in that way. And the environment's so vast that you can help out in so many different ways. What ways have people been helping out as the schemes in the Moorlands, Joe, where people are offering to litter pick, or what kind of opportunities are there in the Moorlands?
Right, so across the Moorlands, we've witnessed a surge in community spirit during this lockdown, and there's loads of fantastic support groups out there where people are going out to help others. But as part of that, obviously, a lot of people are appreciating the environment a lot more. So, for example, here in Endon, at the moment, I'm putting together, and I've got a network of people called Help and Hope that I've set up over the last month. But as part of that network, I'm setting up a team of people who will be regular litter pickers, because we've not been able to have a regular litter pick, because normally every year our parish organises an annual spring litter pick like lots of other villages do. We've not been able to do that because of social distancing measures. So what I'm in the process of doing is putting together a team of 10 people who, what they'll do is when they go out and do their daily exercise and they go out on their walks, they'll be able to wear a high-vis jacket, take a litter picker, take a bag of, a rubbish bag, and they'll be able to do some litter picking whilst they're out doing their exercise. And of course, because the government has lifted a few of the restrictions, people can do unlimited exercise now. So it actually makes it easier for litter pickers to do what they want to do with that. So that's what I'm setting up here in Engine. I know with other people who are doing similar, because obviously we can't have the big group litter pick. People can do it individually or as couples if they live with somebody else. And that's a good way of doing this, because recently we've seen quite a big rise in the number of fly tipping incidents being reported to councils across the country. Fly tipping is absolutely awful. People should not be fly tipping. It's really disrespectful to nature and to other human beings, because it's a public health risk, of course, as well. And councils I've seen a surge in reports, sometimes a 300% increase or even higher than that. So, things like litter picking is so helpful for council staff who have to deal with fly tipping. So I'd encourage everybody to, get that going in their communities.
Can I just put a light-hearted suggestion to you, Joe? I was out on a run not so long ago, and I saw a wonderful high-vis jacket, and I'm showing my age here, so I do apologise to the listeners, but some of them will remember this. The Wombles of Wimbledon used to collect rubbish in their community, and I saw this high-vis jacket. It was called, where I live, the Trenton Wombles, and it just brought a smile to my face and empathy and towards that person who was with his litter picker picking up rubbish. I just thought it was so positive. The whole message was positive, and it made us smile at the same time. There you go. There's a name for you. There's a brand.
Thank you.
Interesting what you mentioned about litter picking, because I was thinking the other day, there's obviously with less people out in the communities, there's going to be less litter being dropped. And with the closure of fast food restaurants, where a lot of people seem to litter outside the car as they don't see, for whatever reason, just keeping the litter until you get home and putting it in a place that's suitable. With the closure of fast food restaurants, do you think there's been a decreased amount of litter as the fast food chains contribute so massively to the overall problem? That's the question to you all, really. I was thinking the other day there's got to be a reduction in litter at the moment.
I certainly see it whilst running out this little litter about. But picking up what Joe's saying, there's people that are doing the gardening at the moment. They're doing DIY, and there's a build-up of rubbish in their own backyard, and the tips are not open, and so that's putting pressure on people, and it probably is some people have been sort of dumping their rubbish elsewhere, and I think that if that can be lightened, we can access those sites. Maybe it will force people not to do that. But in terms of general litter, I've been surprised and encouraged, and I'm really pleased that you don't see these bright coloured wrappers all over the place, and it's a real scar on our environment. And I think if we've got the opportunity now to get that message across and continue in this vein, I think we're living in a far better place.
Hopefully so. And so my final question now for you all is the change that has happened recently with lockdown. Do you think that this will be a lasting effect, the positive low emissions that we've seen recently due to lack of airlines and people running cars? Do you think that these effects will carry on into the long term? Do you think more people now will actually be happy to engage in the environment, and whereas before people like Greta Thunberg, people maybe didn't take as much notice, after the lockdown and going into next year, do you think there'll be an overall bigger respect put on the environment?
I think, like many things, to begin with, I think it will really sort of be drilled into people that we are the ones to make the difference. Whether that will last for years and years, I wouldn't like to say, but I do think certainly to begin with, it will make people realise that we are the only ones who can, we've caused the problem, we're the only ones that can put it right.
Yeah, 100%.
I think we have a unique, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here that we need to grasp with both hands. The lockdown is giving us a chance to review ourselves as a nation and across the globe. Actually, we've been able to review every aspect of our lives, haven't we? Been able to see what damage we've done to the environment over time and what we can do. Because at the end of the day, we all need to be part of this as individuals and groups, as councils, businesses, and government. We all need to work collectively together to resolve this climate crisis that we're in the middle of, that connects to a lot of other different things. Obviously, this country, we've committed to being carbon neutral by 2050. The UK has. I imagine that this lockdown and the bigger focus on the environment will help us to achieve that. That's certainly my hope, and I certainly think that's the hope of a lot of other people. Obviously, we've had a lot of big environmental figures like David Attenborough, Greta Thunberg, people across the political spectrum. Because remember, this doesn't belong to a single political party. This is cross-party. This is, this is a political consensus, I would say. It's something that everybody is united on. We've all got different ways of achieving it, but I would personally say the key thing towards achieving what we want with the environment and cutting down carbon emissions is a technological revolution, and also focusing on local-based solutions. So local communities working with the local council, like we are here in the Moorlands, where Staffordshire Moorlands District Council is working with the community groups out there, to solve these things on a local level, because quite a few of the best solutions to climate change, the big strategy's got to be global and national, of course it has, but it's the little actions on the ground that make that collective difference to that bigger global picture. And I think this lockdown has helped with that. It's helped us on that path. It really has, and I hope that continues. I really do.
That's great. That's really informative. So thank you for that, Joe. Well, we have actually come to the end of today's podcast, so I'd like to thank you all for joining me on My Voice podcast and for giving up your time to speak. So thank you to you all.
Yeah, been a pleasure, mate.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having us.
You're
Thank you
very
very
welcome.
much. And everybody needs to get out there now and spend more time with nature.
Yeah, and hopefully they do so. Well, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.